All right.
Recorder.
Well, hopefully this live streaming on the Vision Train and the meeting is being recorded. And so here we are on the Vision Train Zoom room together for some new Earth visioning. And so, yeah, this is basically, I'm going to talk a little bit about some new Earth visions and what inspires me. And then this is a place for us to all kind of like chip in and share our visions and, get inspired and, we can synergetically come together here. So, the idea for this new Earth visioning Zoom meetings came out of my participation in the Buckminster Fuller Institute's Design Science Studio, which started in the summer of 2020. And this Design Science Studio is going to be hosted over the 10 years from 2020 to 2030. And each of the sessions lasts 7 months. And it's open to people from all over the world to join in, artists, designers, architects. And they actually didn't do it last year. So the third session is imminently about to start and is open for people to join. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat the extremely detailed Google Doc that is the call for people to join it. So if everyone in this meeting here, if you open up this Google Doc, you'll see it has all of the information that you could then share with people in any format, via email, Instagram, Facebook. It's just a total toolkit that explains everything about looking for people to come on board and be part of it. So it's open to 144 people to be in this 7-month-long program, to be meeting twice a week to basically a design science studio. It's a very formal kind of studio with these 2 different group meetings that they are hosted with various other teachers coming in. And that's how I came to not only finish writing my book on Portal to the New Earth and launch the website for it and launch a YouTube channel, but during the course of the Design Science Studio, I was hosting these New Earth Visionings as a place for people to come together and to discuss, our visions of how we can create, something like this AI-generated image that I have as my background. And one day, this will hopefully actually just be a real photograph of where people are living and how we are living. And so, yeah, that's one of the main points I wanted to get out today, so that other people here in this meeting can share the information for people to join the Design Science Studio, which the applications close September 24th, and then the sessions will start sometime in October. Like I say, it'll meet twice a week for 7 months, and at the end of those 7 months is this huge open to the public way of everyone displaying and sharing the projects that they develop during the course of that. So with that said, what I'd like to do right now is I just want to spend a good few minutes going over one of my biggest inspirations for New Earth. I don't have my, oh God, that is not good. Oh, and you know what, this is probably someone, Jarno, are you trying to join our New Earth Visioning group on the Zoom? Oh, that's interesting, Alicia. They're trying to join the Vision Train and they don't have the password.
There isn't one.
There shouldn't be a password. You should just be able to jump on the Vision Train. Now, this is the Vision Train Zoom call, and it should just.
The link that you asking to authenticate. I can try again.
Authenticate. It wants you to sign in. That's one thing I know. You have to be signed in to Zoom.
Yeah.
You can't just be showing up as a guest. You have to be already signed in officially.
Password probably.
Yeah, you have to sign in to Zoom. You can't just show up as an unsigned in Zoom member. So that's the issue. And while we're waiting for Jarno to join us, Jarno is one of the Design Science Studio coaches. Yeah, and hopefully Melissa. Okay, well, hopefully you'll be able to jump in, because we're about to cover some of my biggest inspirations in New Earth Visioning, and hopefully you'll be able to. Is it working for you? Okay, well, good luck. And while we're waiting, let me see, how can I get to this? This will Okay, let me think. Share screen. Here we go. Share and then slideshow from. Okay, so can everyone see the cover of my book, Portal to the New Earth? Okay, well, that's just a little way to jump into this. So, I've been working on this book for about 10 years. It took about, and it's finally got printed, and it's available also on the website for free as a PDF. And this book covers is in two parts. The first part covers exactly what you see on the cover, this whole journey of me using sacred geometry to create interactive portal installations at Burning Man. But the second part of the book is my whole lifelong interest in creating future environments. So when I was inspired by Buckminster Fuller, Paolo Solari, those are covered in detail in the book, I decided to go study at Parsons School of Design. And we're very fortunate to have one of the teachers from Parsons here today, Gene Gardner. And here, Jono, I hope you can get in, but I'm going to hang up on our call. You can call back if you need to. Okay. I hope Jono gets in. He's an amazing person we met through there. So through deciding to formally study future environments, my biggest inspiration, it's interesting to say biggest, but also the earliest in this journey, is this incredible German expressionist architect, Bruno Taut. And I'm just going to briefly go through. I don't want to spend too much time, but I just want to give everyone, a bunch of these images to see so that they can kind of get inspired by him too. He's very well known for building this glass house. Since it was from 1914, there's no color photographs of it, but this was an extremely colorful building. That entire dome structure on top, almost the entire building is made of glass or concrete. And so this let in all of this light, and it was rainbow colored. This is a picture from the outside of the building, and it was built as a temporary structure for this exhibition in the city of Cologne, Germany in 1914, just before World War I. And here's a picture of the interior. The walls are all these glass tile mosaics, and there is these staircases are flanking a central waterfall flowing down the middle. And I heard that there was actually colored lights in there. And then you entered into the top dome, and the top dome was all this glass, colored glass. So it was very rainbow-like effect of being in this building. So then right after World War I, he published this book, which fortunately was republished in 2004 in detail. And it was called, because up until then, it was actually extremely difficult to see a copy of this book. They were very rare. I never saw a copy of the book. And all that you could ever find of this book that he published in 1917 called Alpine Architecture were just images from the book republished in other art books, so that you could just get a sense of, some of the images. But with the book being republished in its entirety, what you see on the cover of the book here is one of the images towards the end of the book, where he was envisioning these crazy cosmic cities in space. It looks like an atom. And mind you, back in 1917, this image of an atom with electrons orbiting was only just discovered at that time. This was the idea that, atoms had nucleuses and electrons, but this is a vision of like a three-dimensional floating city in space. But as you see on the right-hand side, one of these visions of this glass city glowing radiantly on the top of a mountaintop. Not all of the images are in color. A good number are just black and white. So these are two of my favorites, showing both a crystalline city on a mountaintop, but then again, just as you saw in that crystal house, he's envisioning cities in the canyons with water flowing through it. And so what you see there is like, that's a rainbow, like coming out of the city, because there's so much water in the air, and the water is flowing down the middle of it, and the buildings are flanking the canyon walls. And again, another one of the color plates of one of these crystal cities, glowing over the tops of the mountains of the landscape. And then you see in the foreground, though, the lakes and the water flowing through there. And basically, throughout this entire book, he's writing it as a manifesto, and it was like a call to action for everyone to be building these crystalline cities And basically, he was very spiritual. He was part of these spiritual groups and associated with other metaphysical and spiritual thinkers of the time. And he was explaining that the idea is that humans are these spiritual organs of the earth that are here to build not just for themselves, but for the earth in its entirety, that the earth is a living organism, and we are part of this living organism to build these cities in the most beautiful, sacred way. And this whole idea of crystalline, too, is a big part about the shift of consciousness taking place, that we're moving into this more crystalline consciousness. So I'm going to just cover a couple of more of the images. This one is really cool because think about it. This is showing this incredible structure on top of a mountain, and you can see it's geodesic-like. And this is before Buckminster Fuller discovered or invented the geodesic dome, which was about 20 or 30 years later, not until like the late 40s, early 50s when he popularized it. But very interestingly, and I do note this in my book, a geodesic dome was built in Germany for the Zeiss company, which was making optics, and it was built as a planetarium. It wasn't patented and it wasn't popularized at the time. So even though the geodesic dome was invented at that time, but here's just this incredible, idea of this giant megastructure city on top of a mountain. Here's another city that's kind of like a flower in the center of the valley of the mountains there. And again, another one of these ways of inhabiting the waterways flowing down the canyons of a mountain and creating a city around that. And let's see, we have one more, another one of these cities built into a canyon. And of course, all of the writing is in German in that book, which I have the copy of. They do translate all of the notes that he makes on the side, but he's just constantly just writing in general about using glass and using building in the mountains and and working and allowing the light in. Like you see in this one image here, there's these two people about to enter into this, like it's like a cave, but it's all glass structures that are in the canyon. So when I learned about Bruno Taut, I actually felt like I'm like a reincarnation of him, because I align exactly with his visions of how we can build. And even to this day, you don't see or hear much about it, which is why I wanted to share his work with this meeting today, just to show that people have been thinking about this, about how we can go and basically I call it the re-inhabitation or the sacred re-inhabitation of Gaia. Gaia is recognizing the earth as being a living organism, a living conscious organism. And so once we can align with that consciousness and start to work that way. So that is basically what I wanted to share today. So I'm going to stop our share, and we do have Jarno who's joined in, so I'm glad you made it in, and basically open up the floor to a conversation about thoughts about what I just shared, or where you're at with thinking and conceiving, and what the steps we can take to start to actually realize and build things like this, where we could be living in a radically different way than our contemporary Western approach. So thanks. If anyone wants to chime in now, I'm totally open to that. And if not, that's okay. I'm happy to keep ripping. But Jarno, do you want to? You can unmute yourself. Great.
I'm really inspired. I've always wanted to build with cob and with clay and natural materials. And here in Switzerland, it's kind of tight, with the rules and stuff. Like earthships, you can forget it, because they won't allow you to put tires in the ground, which in one way is a good thing. But there's this guy called Peter Vetch, and he was able to be successful in Switzerland, which is kind of tight in a way with rules, but he started to make domed houses. And it's not a particular material that I love, but he uses much less of it. He used iron to make like domes, and many domes that fit together, and people can design it themselves. And then he sprays concrete onto it, and then he covers it with earth again. And maybe I'll put a link in.
Yeah, that would be
And,
great.
I just contacted him today because can you still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. Everyone,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And I just find it really inspiring, and I think it'd be a good base. Like, I'd like to build one of those as like a base, a main base, somewhere where you can then afterwards kind of creep into the forest and start to build your own things, which people can sleep in, which technically are not houses because they don't have a toilet and a sink. And you can still like spread out of that, because he's been accepted here. Yeah. I'll post a link for inspiration. And his houses are very strong. They use much less energy. They have much less, all this mobile waves going in and all that. So I'm inspired.
And you brought up a really good point, though, that, right now our current government and political infrastructures doesn't allow building like that. We have very strict, even in the US too, zoning and stuff. And of course, you mentioned earth ships, which of course I lived in Taos, and I love the concept of earth ships, that you have an autonomous house, but the idea of using the tires as a recycled material for building isn't the best. And so to that end, I want to share a couple of links. So yeah, put your link in, because that's super exciting, that not only is he able to come up with these great ideas, but that they're allowed to be built, because these are the steps we need to take. Clearly is the making inroads into how we can restructure, what is, not just visioning these incredible cities, but then making them practical, that we come together and agree, yes, this is how we want to build. And I want to share, I found this incredible AI generated image of like a new Earth way of inhabiting the Earth. And it actually comes from this website that I just put in named Olizoi, which is a website for regenerative real estate development, nothing less. And it's this guy, Eric Amiot, and his people he's working with that are starting to work on how to design and build. And one of their first projects that they're doing is in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, at 9,000 foot altitude, in an extremely inaccessible type of landscape where no one would normally think, let's go build a little community, a little town here, because it's way up in the mountains. But that's exactly what we saw with Bruno Taut's vision of building in the mountains. And of course, a lot of people might say, no, you have to leave nature. Don't go and put humans into nature like that. We have to preserve our natural landscape. And, let's build where we've already ruined the earth, right? The idea is we're not going to ruin the earth with building these. We're going to be beautifying and building in a very sacred, harmonious, and natural way. And so that's what Eric is developing, one of these communities there called Bright in Colorado. So I shared that. And then he also has another website on his way of building just the homes, just like you mentioned, Jarno, a way to build homes that are the most practical and regenerative, sustainable. What happened here? Did I? Oh, Alicia.
I just decided to pop up the web page to just show, because it's so beautiful. And as I was reading through it, I thought it would be, and other people might be interested to see it as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks for doing that. I mean, so there is, that's the Olizoi website. So yeah, you have the link to it in the chat, and here we are sharing. And there's that image, the design concept and vision plan. I looked at that, I was like, that's so aligned with what where I want to move to and live. And I'll pop in the chat his other website, which is called the Isho House. And that's a way, it's a vision of a very simple, easy to manufacture house, but is also a vision of how you can retrofit current buildings with a lot of the ideas in it. So yeah, these are great resources and great, connections for us all to be making if we are interested to try to actually realize these visions.
I live here next to Earth Haven and Soil. I'm not a part of their community, but if anyone on this call cares to visit, you're welcome to visit me and visit them. I like this regenerative architecture ideas because I see how in rural communities, like one community building creates a whole nexus of, cooperation and connectivity.
Good. I'm going to put that in the chat. I've known about Earth Haven. They've been there quite a long time. I don't know if you could say, I would think they've probably since the 80s, maybe even. I know they were there in the 90s because that's when I learned about them. And it's basically an intentional community or eco-village kind of community there in the Asheville, the Blue Mountain area. So that's so cool that you're joining us and that you mentioned that because, I've been researching this my whole life, and it just seems, few and far between places that are doing it. And Earth Haven is one of the places that has been, plugging away at creating, a permaculture intentional community. So I don't know, Alicia, you've been really helping out. I don't know if you want to bring that website up just so we can see what.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I missed it. I will pop up right now.
Yeah. And that's sorry, what?
And their school is Soil. I guess I don't know what that stands. I am one of these hippies that is. I like to think about what I could do on my own roadside. In terms of community. Yep, those are my neighbors.
It even says it's an aspiring eco-village. It's still, even though it's been there a long time, it's hard for them to say that they are an actual eco-village because it's rather small, I would think. Probably less than 100 people or so living there, so it's hard to call that a village. In the idea of a village is basically, from my research, a village is from 5,000 to 50,000 people. And then the idea of a city, all a city is a cluster of villages. Like I lived in New York City, but I spent most of my time in the East Village because that's where the type of people that I hung out with and that what is. And then of course, you have Greenwich Village, and they actually call them villages in New York City, which is one of the largest cities in the world. And yet it's a cluster of villages. So like when you think about trying to design or build a city, it's in a way all you really need to think about is design and build a village, and then you can cluster villages together to make that into a city. And yet, to really be called a village, you need thousands of people. If it's less than that, it's more just like a community of sorts. And that once you reach a certain threshold of many thousands of people, you start to reach a level of cultural diversity, cultural richness. And the amount of things going on and where you can't possibly know everybody, so it becomes more of an urban situation with a large range of diversity taking place. And so when thinking about designing eco villages, like they said, they're an aspiring eco village. You do have to have the space and the ability to host thousands of people to live full time. And that is, of course, my vision. And of course, as we saw in Olizoy, that is what they're looking to do, real estate development. And, there's two approaches. I'm coming from the visionary approach where I would like to go into, a place that has not been developed by humans yet, maybe even would be considered undevelopable because it's so steep and so inaccessible. And we go in and start to terrace the earth and make an entirely new visionary village from the ground up. but there's also the practical approach, which I agree is absolutely necessary, where they call it, what is it? Transition town has been around for quite a while. The idea of transition town is how can we retrofit our existing communities to be regenerative, to be sustainable, to be these, future eco-villages that we're dreaming about creating, that lives in, regenerative harmony with the earth instead of in the detrimental way. And, there's so many, that is important. And I hope that there will be lots of people jumping on board to do that work as well. Does anyone else have any comments or thoughts to jump in on all we've been talking about?
I'd like to make a couple of comments.
Yes, thanks, Lauren.
I've just been, from the first, when I was looking at the drawings that we first looked at, because I live on the Olympic Peninsula, right up against the Olympic Mountains. And there are a number of issues going on having to do with the orca and the salmon, particularly because in the past, people had utopian ideas that they wanted to terraform the land in order to reach a goal. And the goal was to make it easier for humans to make electricity out of water, which seemed like a really great idea. And it still is. However, what they did is they built a series of dams all up and down rivers. Klamath has it, the Snake River, which flows into the Columbia River, and where I live is the Dungeness and the Elwha. The Elwha River, a dam got destroyed or taken down on purpose in 2013. And it's allowed for the regeneration of the salmon going up the Elwha River. Yeah, the Dungeness, they've been doing some other things to help the salmon go up the Dungeness River. But there is controversy here with the Snake River, because there are 3 dams on the Snake River that are basically preventing the salmon from going up. And every year, the salmon count goes down. And every year, more of our orca, and the L25 orca that I keep an eye on has 70 individuals now, 73 individuals. They've had a couple of new babies and a pregnant orca that is malnourished. And many of them are malnourished because they can't get enough salmon. Now, the people that did the dams did not have the vision of something happening 150 years in the future. And I'm wondering what your team is doing to envision, to take into all the people, the 4-leggeds and the 2-leggeds, the fin people, the green people, the flyers, the fungi, and all the entire ecosystem. And when you're talking about going up into the mountains into a place, and you mentioned you understand the conservation idea. We don't have too many of those places anymore. And the ones that are there are taking care of other people, like orca. And I also wanted to mention that I spent 6 years on a commune, 6 years connected with Stephen Gaskin's farm. And one of the things I noticed, and I noticed you said something, it's a small group. That's good that it's a small group, because when it gets to be bigger, things don't work out as well as you think it's going to be, and you're running up against things because humans like to fight. And the more of us there are together, the more disagreements and conflict that there's going to be, and it's only a natural thing. And I was just wondering what your vision for community is in that respect, because, and I love what's going on, I love the things that you showed on the website, and the pictures are beautiful. It's just the practical implications, the practical applications that we artists are not so good at. And I know this from experience.
I want to respond, and I'm sure there's probably some other people that have some responses. So I'll try to keep mine short and then let some other people go because it's such a great point. And like you say, one of the biggest issues with any communities or trying to do things on a bigger scale, like you said, people want to fight, people want to have control. Our current paradigm of governing is a very corrupt system and a very control dominating system. And so and also, like you say, going in, we built these dams. We think, oh, we could make electricity, but of course it wreaked environmental havoc by building the dams. Of course, we're on the verge of free energy and that kind of way of understanding our relationship to the energy in the universe and not having to build dams or big windmills or even solar panels. So that's hopefully imminent. The biggest key, and like I said, I wanted to keep this short, is the shift of consciousness, the shift of the way that we're thinking individually and communally in a much more enlightened and sacred way to understand that we're not just building things just for humans to benefit, but for all of life to be integrated in a harmonious way. So when we do go into these pristine natural areas to, build habitations, to do it in the most conscious and sacred way. And I feel like this shift of consciousness is the underlying pinning. And that's why when I showed Bruno Taut's visions, but those visions are coming from that shift of consciousness. I truly believe that he was a very spiritually awakened person that was thinking of these cities to be built where, and he even said it explicitly, that these buildings were being built not just for the benefit of humans, but for the benefit of all the life, for the trees and for the animals and the entire earth, to see the earth as a living organism and all of the animals and all of the plants and everything on it as working together. So that's my response, is that if we're going to be going ahead and doing things like it, and working together in community, in governing these things and trying to make it so that we can all work together, we have to be coming from moving. A big part of the shift taking place is moving from the mind and moving into the heart, right? And so we have to be coming from a more heart-centered guidance of how we do all these things and think, is this the most loving, the most heart-centered? Is this the best way possible? And thinking not just 150 years in the future, but thousands of years in the future. I even thought like we'd be planting redwood trees to be harvested in 1,000 years. So we can use it's a wonderful thing. Like to cut down a tree and use the wood from the tree is not a bad thing. The trees like that. We make beautiful things to do it. When we do it in a heartless way and just wipe out a landscape and do it just to make money, not because we care about the wood and care about what we're building out of it, but to cut down 1,000 or 2,000-year-old redwood tree and build beautiful things out of it is not a terrible thing. I mean, the tree is going to live its life and die and fall and rot into the forest anyway at some point. And, the same with all the things that we do that are detrimental in the earth. When done consciously and with love, they can be done, harmoniously. When it's done heartlessly and just for greed and profit, that's the issue. So it's a shift of the way we think about these things, not the actual things we're doing. So anyone else want to chime in? This is quite a soapbox. I could go on for quite a while, but I made my point.
I was just going to say, I think that this is precisely why, systems design is such a critical, and then having all the voices participating in the conversation, right? So that we can have all the different minds thinking about the different aspects, so that we don't have starving orcas 150 years down the line after, putting a dam in. I mean, like Lauren said, I'm sure nobody intended that there would be starving pregnant orcas as a result of a dam that was built. But this is why we need, we need systems design, right?
Yep, comprehensive thinking and long-term thinking. But all of this stuff is still kind of mind-oriented. I think that shift to the heart, because once you do things with heart and not heartlessly, then you start to see this bigger picture, and connect with the heart of all beings in the earth. And anyone else?
Well, I'd like to step back and suggest that even the idea of thinking about tomorrow I think we all realize is a kind of control. That what does it mean if we start thinking about 2,000 years from now? That's control. I think one of the incredible things that's happened as a result of both the pandemic and climate change is to see that human beings have such a limited experience because of modernity. Yes, Tout was fantastic. Those were harps in those valleys. And when the wind came down, they played music. I mean, they're beautiful, visionary, but to translate them today is something that the conditions have to be identical. What I'm trying to say is, I think we have to change our fundamental idea of what it means to live in community with plants and animals, indigenous peoples, and realize that this idea of control, which is part of modernity, which did away with traditional habits, that never, you went out every morning and you felt where the wind was coming. So you don't fly your kite in the opposite direction. So it's a wholly new human being. And what's happening here in the Delaware River Valley is that's a traditional people that the colonists from Europe met, the Lenape, and then proclaimed to the world that they didn't have any idea who they were or where they came from, what happened to them. Well, they drove them away to the West, as we all know. Indigenous people live everywhere on the earth. It's one of the things I'm fascinating about. And they're coming back to their homelands. So in the Delaware River Valley, the Lenape are coming back. They're coming to meetings and they're saying, this spring, S-P-R-I-N-G, water source is sacred. We have some experience that we can share with you. I think it's just tremendously important that we realize that traditional peoples and people who still live in the way I was just describing are in our midst. And don't think that, I think it's fantastic what I'm hearing here, but this is just a small minority of people. Most of us live on an earth where there isn't a single place that hasn't been changed by the human presence, which is toxic air, toxic water. That's not the reality. There's no pristine place. So I'm just introducing the idea that we let go of this long range planning and really go out and feel. It's been dark here in Pennsylvania for 3 or 4 days because of these huge storms coming from the Midwest. So I'm sitting in the top of the hayloft of an old barn and I'm looking out at the sky and realizing my ancestors knew what that sky meant. But I have to run to, AccuWeather to find out. Instead of, okay, oh, look, that tree is, the wind's blowing this way. But you understand what I'm trying to say, that we have to let go of this idea that we can solve a problem and can control. And we live in a much bigger community. When I go out the other side of the barn, I see the most fantastic things. A big buck going by with his horns, and then a little doe and the fawns coming around behind. There's just so much we have to learn. So I'm thrilled. Harlan was a student of mine. I'm thrilled to see him doing this. And I want to add this 2 cents or 5 cents. I can make money on this.
You know, Rosie just put in the chat this book, Sand Talk, How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World. And if you'd like to talk about that a little, but thank you so much for bringing up the indigenous, you know, now so many people, when they say where they live, they'll reference the indigenous people that lived there before and reference that, even though, you know, obviously we've colonized it completely. But like you say, they're coming back, and we are open to that. And thank you so much for bringing up that point, because I've always felt a strong connection to Native American teachings. And I even have a meditation practice that's based on Cherokee, you know, spiritual teachings. And so, yeah, I don't know, Rosie, since you brought up that book, did you read it? Do you want to comment some more about this reconnecting to the indigenous thinking and how we're reintegrating that into
It's
our...
a great book. And for a while we were reading a chapter. I had the book on tape when we were doing a chapter on the vision train, followed by just everybody just pitching in and discussing, you know, while we were painting. And I highly recommend it. It just showed how in his history, the author who actually, I love that the author is actually the person that's reading the book when you buy the book on tape, because that always makes it more special. Anyway, you know, how total disregard to the native people of the land, you know, when it comes to building and planning a city out. They never even discuss things with them, and they look at them as like, because they maybe don't have the same, you know, they don't write English in the proper way. They looked at them as if they had no knowledge when they had so much amazing knowledge. And there was Lauren's trip of braiding sweetgrass, which was also similar about all the herbs, you know, that we think are weeds and stomp out. I mean, I just found out something I planted in my garden because I thought it was really cool looking, that my neighbor had, is amaranth. This, you know, I call it the fuck you plant because it has this big fingers and then just, they look like this, the plant looks like that, but it's this really amazing plant that's so healthy. And, you know, like, you know, one man's weeds is another person's, you know, healing herb. And yeah, we're totally disconnected. And I don't know, I'm going off on a real other shift, Harlan, and I hope this is okay, everybody, but about thinking about the future and worrying about weather and climate change. Like, guys, is anybody else like thinking about weather manipulation? Because this is something that is so big. DEW, direct energy weapons, that are creating fires by splashing down, you know, energy from these super duper planes that some person owns. And who are they? Who is it? Who are these rich powers behind manipulating weather, making one place a desert and one place have a flood the next week, and manipulating earthquakes? This is like interesting times, because how do you plan ahead and plan a beautiful eco village like in Hawaii, and then you don't know who is going? Anyway, I've been very disturbed about weather manipulation, how it's a total disgrace to the environment and nature, what's going on, you know. And it's, I'm sorry, I got off on a whole.
No, that's a good one, and I'd like to comment on it. And it's something which I wanted to comment on earlier on at the very beginning of this talk when Jean was talking. And it has, okay, so it's a very interesting predicament that we're in here as humans on Earth in this kind of a transitional period. We're definitely in, you know, the analogy is the butterfly.
It can make or break us.
Yeah. But the analogy is the butterfly. The caterpillar goes into this cocoon and turns into this chaos, you know, goo, and then comes out a butterfly. And we're in the transition right now. So, and I try to keep my foot planted equally in both worlds, if you want to divide it into just two worlds. One is the very 3D scientific control-based, you know, very knowledgeable. There's lots of smart people, and we have so much technology and science, and that's the way the world is. And we could do this weather manipulation with these technologies, whether it's the HARP antennas or planes or satellites or other nefarious ways of doing all this stuff. And the whole entire control paradigm that's based on on all the smartest thinkers in the world. I follow Daniel Pinchbeck, who's kind of trying to bridge the gap, but he's more firmly planted in the very intellectual way of thinking and studying all the different people writing about it, talking about it, all of the, all the great universities of our planet and all these very smart, but that's a very 3D approach. And that's kind of the old world that we're shifting away from. And I was talking about how there's this evolution of consciousness, of spirituality, of awakening to this new consciousness. And in that new awakening, that actually goes all the way to the source of all creation. We're all divine, sovereign creator beings, and we can operate from a higher dimensional level in that we can actually control and work with the weather, not with these technology and machines, but because we become in harmony with the earth and with nature and with spirit, and we can work with the weather from that dimension in that way. And that's how we're awakening to this higher spiritual awakening and higher dimensional way of being. That's the new earth. That's why I call what I do portal to the new earth. I try to stay focused on the physical manifestations, which is why I showed those drawings of Bruno Taut. But ultimately, this whole thing that we're doing is a very spiritual, very metaphysical shift that's taking place. And it takes place from within, and it takes place from us waking up to understanding and knowing that we are divine, sovereign creator beings with unimaginable power to transform the earth and to shift all these things. If you get caught up in, oh my God, humans have created climate change and we're destroying the earth, and what are we going to do about it? You're falling back down into that lower 3D consciousness and feeling like a hopeless pawn. When you can awaken to the higher of realization that we can actually do and fix all of these things from this higher dimensional level, and know that we have this power. Now,
I hear you. Let
me just finish, because there'll be naysayers that just saying, oh, you're just some new age woohoo guy. You got to wake up and smell the coffee. This is the way the world works, this 3D scientific practical way. And from their perspective, they're right. That is truth. There is a consensus reality where that is the absolute truth. But the paradox is that there's more than one truth. There is an ultimate truth that transcends that truth. So, it's a touchy subject. That's all. If anyone else wants to chime in on it, because it's really, there's, okay.
Yeah, and this is what in design science, right? We talk about, we've had conversations around eco grief, and the grief that we feel when we know that there are starving orcas at the mouth of the river that can't get food, when we know that there are man-made fires that devastate entire populations of people, the eco grief is valid. And also, so is turning your focus towards the new way, so I don't think that there's one way or the other. I think that they're both valid approaches.
Yes, we do need to integrate this all together somehow,
like I'm trying not to get emotional about it. I'm like, I studied the 48 tapes. It's like I'm trying to observe but take action. So like if I see something going on, around me environmentally hurting things, I'm not going to say, oh, this one did this. I want to take action in whatever way I can. And also I agree with you, Harlan. I want to hold that positive vision. I do believe that, like, if the way we operate spiritually, consciously, that we can, alternate our, like, I think there are, what is the word? Existing, different existences going on at the same time, that we could hop into an alternate reality that is more aligning with us by, how we think and act. And yet at the same token, it's all going on at the same time. Am I making myself at all clear? Okay, thanks, Jaron. Because it's hard to express sometimes when, like.
I also see both sides, and then I kind of get stagnated in between sometimes. But then I realize it's like you know, the sum of all the good energies that come on the planet and the sum of all the bad energies. So are you going to be something that's just a nothing energy because you kind of get paralyzed? Happens to me. Or are you going to be a negative energy? You're going to complain about it and do nothing? Or you're going to take part in it, be even more negative? Or are you going to see, okay, how can I do it? Because in a certain way, it's also, I mean, death is like a big theme for me, because I think, like, in the end, I think, okay, so what if it's all going to blow up in some kind of strange way because come some kind of strange people, or because they don't think they want me around? And then I think, okay, well, all I can do is just do what I want to do the good stuff, do what's in line with my belief. And in this whole conversation, I started seeing this creation of a new place. But the new place could be also in the old place. I mean, you almost have to be like a bodhisattva and go back into the city where you don't want to live, and then start to change it there, because that's the only way most of the people are going to see it. Because the fringe out there is only available to the fringe, and maybe slightly to a few who go then to workshops. And I don't know if I have the personal strength, but I just saw in this conversation that maybe instead of making something new somewhere else, you just have to go into New York and look that they get plants on every building, for example. And then, like, more people, because there's so many people out there waiting for that one person who smiles in the subway, not waiting, but when that person smiles, hey, I mean, I remember a smile for the whole day if I get a real beautiful smile. So it's like this big challenge of wanting to run away and make your own idyllic thing and staying there where you are. But I think ultimately the more powerful way and this faster way, I don't know, it's my idea, could be that you actually go in to, the dragon's den and start there, because they're the other people just waiting, and it's like, wow, this is cool. Wow, I want to do that too, Yeah, it's a big thing.
Yes, I'd like to comment. That's a great thing, because, and I kind of think, we've been on for almost the hour, and I'm thinking of a way to, like, close the meeting, which we'll do in a few minutes, not right away. And this is what I was thinking. Sometimes I'll walk into Walmart, right? You see all this junk from all over the world. And I try to picture, what would the new Earth Walmart look like? And I envision all the people living in the community making the products locally and bringing them there with love and care. And it's all like this amazing, beautiful handmade, and everyone's doing and sharing things. And yes, we can ship these things, and you can get stuff from other parts of the world too. But and also, like you say, go into New York City. I lived in New York City most of my life, and I'm going to be going back there to visit it for this opening at the Museum of Modern Art on emerging ecologies. It's a retrospective show of environmental architecture that's taking place, that features 6 of the architects that's in my book. So I'll be there in the middle of this huge city, and like you say, if you could just be holding the vision of what the city would look like in the future, that's all planted with greenery, and there's the cars are removed, and it's a much more peaceful and beautiful way of, in this beautiful, sacred, sustainable way. And it all starts with having the vision of it, it's thinking of it. And that's kind of like my goal for hosting these Zoom meetings, is to share these visions. And so before we close, what I want to do for closing, but we'll let other people chime in with other thoughts and things too, before going to this final thing, where we just take a few minutes to take a few deep breaths and go into a meditation where we picture, wherever it is in the world, the way that we see this new earth coming into being. Just feel yourself standing there, walking through it, and seeing things all brought into harmonious accord in the best way possible. And like, feel that vision, think that vision as much as possible, because that's, in one way, how it starts. First, you set up that thought of it to go out into the newsphere to make it possible. And then other people may tune in and those things will start to come into being. And also, I'm just going to throw into the chat, earlier in the chat for the people that were here, I put in the ponderous Google Doc of how we're going to invite people to the Design Science Studio. But this is just the link to the Design Science Studio. And that's what I mentioned at the beginning for the people that showed up late. The reason why I'm hosting this in there, thanks for showing it, but the link is in there, that we want to spread the word to other visionaries to be able to join this 7-month program that's going to be, applications close the end of September, and that they'll start in October. But so, yeah, with the thought of, I want everyone to share if they've been thinking anything, and you could say anything relating to why you're here today and what your visions for the new earth are, or just any thoughts, so that, because that's the idea, is that this is open for discussion. And once everyone's had a chance to share something, I'd like to lead like this little closing meditation of thinking and holding the visions of the new earth. So thanks for Alicia for showing that. And so, yeah, if everyone wants to download from the chat the designscience.studio website link, so that if you're interested in joining it, or if you know other people, we want to get the word out to as many people, artists, architects, designers, anyone interested in working in a design science studio. It's a very beautiful, formal, meets twice a week for 7 months. It's a great way to incubate your projects if you have any thoughts along that. So yeah, anyone else want to jump in with any final thoughts from anything we discussed today, or just anything else you want to share with the group? We haven't heard from everyone. I'm sure there's someone that wants to say something, or if not, that's okay. But I'd like this to be an open discussion.
Yeah, I'll say that I was in the second cohort of design science for the design science decade, and it was one of the most incredible experiences. And honestly, I mean, it was I went to every call, and it was almost more than you could even digest. It's such an incredible opportunity. They do an amazing job of bringing in different speakers and guest teachers for the sessions. And I mean, I just pulled out like the pitch deck. Remember Caro's pitch deck workshop? I just pulled that out just a couple days ago again. Just an incredible resource. And it's just one that you almost can't even take advantage of all that there is to offer. So I can't recommend it enough. Highly recommend checking out designscience.studio.
True. I experienced it too.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, Jarno, of course, we met there. So I guess that's enough of a.
Harlan, I'm just going to read something short that directly applied to what you were saying, and will complement it, because I just got it yesterday and it was so inspiring. I stuck it up here. It's possible to think greater than your present reality, to have a dream, vision, or objective much larger than your present life. When you become captivated by a dream and act in a way that corresponds to a potential new reality, eventually reality changes to match your efforts. Even if the external world seems to show no difference, hold an image of the future in your mind that feels so real, you live it as if the dream were already happening. Are your thoughts, feelings, and actions aligned with the future you want to create?
Perfect. So I think that's a great segue into, I'm going to just give a little guidance to this, and we'll just take like a minute in silence. But so I'm going to base it loosely on this Tom Kenyon meditation called the Sphere of All Possibilities. So what we're going to do is take a few deep breaths and picture ourselves in the center of a sphere that encompasses the entire universe, however big you know or think the universe to be. Billions and billions of light years across. It's a ginormous sphere that encompasses all the universe. And what we're going to do is see from the surface of that sphere points of light that will then come to our center, to our heart, to our solar plexus, that are going to actualize this vision that Jarno was just sharing of thinking of the world of that we want to live in that's greater than we could possibly imagine. And being that the sphere is so big, anything is possible. It's the sphere of all possibilities. And then we're going to beam this forward to our future self that's actually living in this new earth that we are actualizing right now. And we're not just thinking this, but we're going to sink into feeling it. We're going to see it the best we could see it and feel it as if it's real. Think of it in any specifics you want, whether it's the town you're living in or some New York City transform or just anything, and make it as specific and as real as possible. And we'll just sit as a group, meditating together, holding these visions and beaming them to our future selves that is in that world and making it as real as possible. And just we'll do it in silence for this minute, but know that this is actually going out there, and we're doing, and in fact, we're doing it together right now. And people who watch this recording and later can join in, and we're just dreaming and bringing about our future new earth that's in perfect sacred and harmony and beauty for all life on the planet. Just take the few deep breaths and we'll just sink into this vision. Would anyone like to share any thoughts or visions that they had during this at this time?
Yes, this is Nina. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Nina.
I envision a world that encompasses a community that will allow children to feel safe, that all grown-ups would care and be in community to support the autonomy and safety of everyone in the community, all the children. And not having to worry about being kidnapped out of nowhere. That's my son. Hi, I'm Kristen. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, I just, I realized that this vision of such peace and beauty and harmony, maybe goes against what some people might say is human nature, and that, strife and negativity and crime and all these things and war are part of human nature. But I do know that those can be brought into balance. And, I see there will always be issues. There'll be always things to overcome, but I just see a world of magic and beauty. And I can, and the weather being, just all the things you said, like we can feel safe. We don't have to lock things because we're all in a world of abundance. So it'll take time. And, the thing is, it doesn't have to happen entirely all over the world all at once. But as pockets of these places start to be created and people start to live that way, the future, will spread, in a very harmonious way. Anyone else have thoughts to share before we close the meeting? Oh, don't be shy. It's great to hear anyone who hasn't said anything if you would like to, because it's nice to hear it put into words and not just in silent thoughts.
Envisioning symbiotic relationships throughout all communities and ecosystems.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming today.
Okay.
So this is going to be, done on the last Fridays, at least through the rest of this year. So spread the word to other people that you think might be interested. And, I'll be covering other topics or bringing in some other guests to share during the course of these next few. And so I think that this was really wonderful. I'm really grateful for everyone who showed up today. I hope you enjoyed this. And until the next one of these, we'll just have a wonderful day, and thank you all for being
Thank you so much for hosting this conversation, Harlan, and super grateful to Jean for being here as well, and Jarno, Rosie, Danielle, Corey, Lauren, Nina, your son as well, Mukta, so glad you popped in as well. We'll be back having this same discussion in 1 month from now on September 29th, right here on the Vision Train, and we will live stream that one as well. So if you're out there watching, you can also jump in on the call and participate in the conversation if you like. We'll be sharing more information about that on our socials, so keep an eye out on for that, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Yep. And thanks, Rosie, for that tip on that book. That's a really good one. I gotta get that. Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Until next time. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.